Thanks.
Fixation of the soul
There's 6 minutes. I'm not let that run.
destruction of the soul the poor man's wealth is in a holy, holy why fight each other? Why kill your brother? And your wall will be the same. Your wall will be the same. Got to be a better nation. Clean up that creation. Or there will be no beautiful you. You will be. The lips of the righteous teach us the way, but the fools die for want of wisdom. For the rich man's wealth is fixation of the soul is vanity. Destruction of holy, the poor man's wealth is in a holy, holy place.
Good morning, people. This is Russ. This is WSTX 970 AM. It is always good, and I give thanks for being able to be here on another day, this side of the planet, this side of Earth. And again, there's so many things that we can talk about, but let's talk about the things that we're actually going to be doing something about, or at least we know for a fact that someone is doing. Um, we're living in some, well, I guess times haven't necessarily changed. And the conditioning of your mind all depends on who you are in spirit. And again, the majority of people believe that your governments don't tell lies and don't lie to the people. And that's to the advantage of those who have clandestine intent and clandestine motives and actions, right? So when we are victims to a degree of what a constant, uh, what a philosophy, what an ideology subscribes to make sure that a particular group of people are always going to remain subjugated, right? It is difficult for that people to come out of the subjugation, always being subservient, always being happy to have something, but still remaining under or beneath the common, the average. It is expected of you. It is also hard when you are indoctrinated just by living experience over the years into the ideology that will always keep you oppressed in mind without even realizing it, to the extent that some will look to defend this subordination with their own very God given precious life. It is the nature of the beast, but that's due to the vulnerability of the being in spirit as well as in mind. And those who are seeking to keep you there just so happen to run the governments. It's not by error, it is also by design. The things that you experience when it comes to lacking things in life that are practically no reasons why there is a lack. There isn't any real reasons why we will complain day in and day out about our utility systems, the water and the power. There's no reason for the lack, none whatsoever. There's no shortage of anything. There's no shortage of monies either. There's no reasons why we should be struggling with our systems of learning, the school system, our educational system. There shouldn't be any reason. There isn't any reason for it other than the philosophy, the ideology that seeks to keep the masses oppressed. And it doesn't matter what race, what color or creed you are, but it just so happened that it's majority concentrated on one particular phenotype, color of skin, and genotypes for that matter. So are we now in the Gregorian year of 2026 going to still subscribe to that ideology that has kept a particular person or persons or group of people subjugated, always being under someone else? There's no reason for that either, other than what that ideology subscribes or prescribes to. What's the purpose of it? So, if we fail to understand how the planet, the world that we work in, the mechanism work, we're always going to be repeating things over the generations, over the years. That's why the saying is that the more things change, the more they remain the same. You would hear people express certain things that occurred 50, 100 years ago. You think that you're discussing what's occurring today. So when the balance is where we're going to have enough people spiritually with integrity that's going to stand up for what's right, no matter what. Don't know what that shift looks like, but I would always have to give thanks to my ancestors, to our ancestors who went against that subjugated grain, who stood up. Some of them lost their lives. Many of them names we don't even know. And they did so because they had integrity, they had courage, and they know what life was. So they were willing to even do that, not to be in those subjugated state, evil state at that. We don't know their names, but they did so. And some of us conveniently benefit from it to the point where today in 2026, you are operating under a subjugated spirit. And to some of you, it's not. That's just who you are without realizing that the effort to be liberated, to be free, has never ceased. It's an ongoing. Truth is a constant. Your God given right, you know, the Almighty of righteous given right is for you to constantly be free. But the negative energy, if you want to identify it as the devil, the demon, Satan, all these different negatives, is to always keep you from, deprive you of that bountiful happiness and joy, a state that the Almighty of righteousness have provided you. So here we go now with wars and rumors of wars. Actual beings murdering, killing, annihilating people and trying to justify it, telling themselves lies, and who wants to buy into these lies because of their current status. Simple minded people living a negative life and trying to justify it simply because they're not on the current receiving end of the physical, diabolical, evil, terroristic results of what imperialism is. Imperialism, that ideology that traveled the world, suppressing, oppressing, annihilating, murdering, killing other beings, claiming to have the right, not for stewardship, but for ownership of God given, the Almighty of righteousness given land. So we move forward into current times where governments of the world are already strategized. In particular, there's something called the Committee of the 300s, and it is actually families, uh, governments run by families, institutions run by families, to include churches, to include universities, over the years, who have put time and effort in to studying people's behavior throughout the world. They spent time competently to do so. And if you could, I apologize if you could just hold for 1 minute. Stand firm, people. Demonic presence. Yeah, so, and they always seek to do it. And over the years, over the generation, over the decades, that has been uh, what has been oppressed on otherwise a peaceful people worldwide. So much so that when we talk about governments don't lie to the people, and there's still people believing right now that the governments are not lying to them. And you can't help that because some people are just lacking deductive reasoning. They can't deduce things, no matter how you what you put before them. there's going to be some people who are, no matter what material you put before them, um, they're not going to be able to comprehend what's being read, no matter what. That's a given. And the studies are already out there. They've already put enough investment in time and people into getting the necessary data so they know confidently what they can and what they cannot do when it comes to the inhabitants of the planet. No matter what government, no matter what international bodies you are, believe, or I should say, know this if you can, because you wouldn't want to believe that even registering to vote, the election system that you're going to participating in here and internationally, the outcome is already predicted, it's already allowed by this particular group, whether you want to believe this or not. And that's the beauty of the energy who's going to smile with you refusing to believe that these outcomes are already allowing based on this particular group. And they've passed this ideology from generation to generation. It's just the same way what you see now from generation to generation. Let's give an example in Congress. The ideology still remains the same because Congress is still populated by a particularly dominant Anglo-Saxon group and body. Anglo-Saxon labeled white, labeled European, labeled Caucasian, right? It is a fact. You're not making these things up. And in the process, you've heard of the Stockholm syndrome, and that's also a technique that's used when your oppressor keeps you oppressed to the point where they convince you that what you're being kept oppressed of, you should be participating in. And it's just by human nature that after you're being oppressed, they will tell you, well, you have a right to be participating in what I'm participating in. Then, you know, whoever doesn't believe it is wrong. And you, the oppressed, start now taking on the bidding for the oppressor. And they give you a Willie Lynch syndrome, which is actually putting people against themselves, notably the descendants of the enslaved. Difference in skin tone, difference in texture, skin, hair texture rather, the difference in educational or indoctrination level, the difference in financial status, the Willie Lynch. We start to consume and fight each other, right? And they know what that's like. They also know when you get to a point in time, you're also going to be trying to justify all of these things, you know, and you're going to start to use cognitive dissonance, where you're trying to rationalize something, even though you know, and the rationalization, it's not good, but you're going to stay on whatever is not going to benefit you. And you have the phenomenon of following, where you, no matter what, people are just going to follow ignorance, not knowing, not having information, whatever group seems to have your attention, you're naturally going to follow, no matter what, not even having information, you're just going to follow. So in the Gregorian year of 2026, it is a political season, and you have descendants of the enslaved participating in a structure of government left and designed by your oppressor, those who captivated you, those who benefited from your enslaved ancestors. Here comes the Stockholm syndrome. And over the years, keeping you in that second class citizen status, even to question whether or not you were included into the fabric of the state, you now have adopted the ideology of your captor and your oppressor. So you think now that this system that you are now allowed to participating in, you have a full right to, without realizing it was never designed for you to benefit. But you've taken on, and some of you happily want to sit in the seat of master. So because you think that you have assigned yourself these seats in this system that was never designed to satisfy you, but that's all that you know, you're not willing to think outside. Your spirit can allow you to do it because not all of us have a spirit of liberation, a consent to be free. Some of us want to be captive, and some of us are happy to be captive. You're happy to be in the cage as long as your interest is satisfied. And those of you who seek to stop those who from even stepping out of the cage, you would not allow that to happen because then it takes you from the seat that you think master left that you're not sitting down in that you feel so prominent and achieving that it's not you're not you do everything to stop individuals from walking out of the cage. You now take on the role of the master, the slave master, the oppressor. And like Mr. Koopman will remind us, giving us the whole our ancestral adages that the ruling of a nation begins in the homes of its people. And that's what they've been seeking to do all along. And governments are lying to you. Our homes right now are not stable. We don't have a fully functioning parental guidance. We have a male and a female in the home. You know, that's by design, especially in the quote unquote black families. We don't have that. That's by design. And we want to feel that no matter what else are we going to do, how are we going to change things? Believe me, people, we need a serious change in government and in governance, you know. But if we don't know fully how the government is running and we want to believe in the here and now, or just what's before us, we're always going to be behind. We're always going to be at a loss because then the devil is smiling because, you know, we are exactly where they want us to be. And here we are now in time where throughout the world, most of the governments are lying to us. And we're accepting the lies because we figure we have achieved something, you know, under the system that the oppressor have left for you to fill. And it's not fulfilling what it is to be liberated. It is to be, it's to on what they have left for you to do by design, which is to always keep you in control, never to benefit you, and allow you to enjoy free. It is always
The sound of the crowd in my ear. You might ask what it takes to remember when you know that you've seen it before, where a government lies to a people and a country is drifting to war. There's a shadow on the faces of the men who send the gun to the wars that are fought in places where the business interests run. On the radio, talk shows, on TV, you hear one thing again and again, how the USA stands for freedom and we come to the aid of a friend. But who are the ones that we call our friends? These governments killing their own, or the people who find they can't take anymore, and they pick up a gun or a brick or a stone, and their lives in the balance. There are people under fire, there are children at the cannons, there is blood on the wire.
First AP that
There's a shadow on the faces of the men who fan the flame, of the wars that are fought in places we can't even say the name. They sell us the president the same way they sell us our clothes and our cars. They sell us everything from youth to religion, the same time they sell us our war. I wanna know who the men in the shadows are. I wanna hear somebody asking them why. It can be counted on to tell us who our enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight or to die, and never lives in the balance. There are people under fire, there are Shooting at the cannons, there is blood on the wire. And there are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannon. They're
But that is the reality of the fact that our governments and the government of the US tell lies constantly to its people. It is not hearsay, it's not conspiracy theory, it's just facts and it's truth. And that lie is never to benefit the people themselves, it's always to benefit the few. We haven't actually spent the time, and some of us have not been allowed the privileges and the time to know what the history of these truths are. And when we want to be engaged in this time, and we could easily get caught up in this whole election system and rationalize the reason why we need to register to vote and why we need to vote. And we do need better people in office, quote unquote leadership, to do the rightful bidding of the people, to make sure that all the lacks that we just mentioned aren't had, all this corruption, all this necessity, to put the right people in government. And now to figure out why you're hearing that so many people are being indicted for theft, outright theft and fraud, and different violation of codes of laws that they've taken oath for. And you would want to know how we got to the place where we are, where there's people actually in majority of the offices in the government of the Virgin Islands are participating in some form of theft, some form of fraud. How do we get there? It's not just these individuals who are hearing. A lot of people sitting now next to you are still stealing. You know, what drives that? How is that becoming part of the culture where the government is supposed to be doing the bidding for, and through the people are in actually having people in the government actually stealing? It is by design that that's being allowed. You could take the recent case with Carlton Dow. They already have all the information they're accusing him of prior to all of this. Again and again, with every one of these officials in offices right now, they have enough information to not take them to jail, but to take them straight to prison, even considering the rule of law. But it's to their benefit to allow these things to go, and they're going to use it as tools. You don't see why and how Mr. Dow is now being indicted for the things and being charged with these things. Because, again, we're not looking at these things for what they are. We're looking for how you're being indoctrinated into believing how these things work. So when truth comes before you, you meet it with aggression, discord, there's a pushback. You're conditioned to believe and to operate this way and to rationalize cognitive dissonance. Look these things up for yourselves. He who has and she who has they, we who have ears to hear, let us do. Truth is a constant, and we are only as honest as the Almighty God of righteousness knows us to be, nothing else. So when we speak and we don't know the world affairs and how this international body works, just with the intelligence agencies in the US, as well as those in the world who are being controlled again by these special interest individuals who are spent and invested enough time to control the monetary systems, the fact that you're going to create the need to depend on these monetary systems that they control. They have actually changed the laws in and before you to make you believe and have a need for the monetary system in the world that they control. And you would want to believe that The United States is separate to the UK, separate to everybody else, and separate to all these controlling families in the world. And you wouldn't see the difference because the information is not before you because you're dependent again on the sources of information that they control, the news networks, the universities, the colleges, the institution created for it. They run these things, they control these things, believe it or not. They've invested very well. It's not conspiracy theories. The receipts are there. But we want to now in this small little, particularly tiny little colony, a little speck. But this little speck has a value that a lot of people are not aware of and don't appreciate. And that's also by design. The status quo who is here, the friend up who want to be in charge of things and want to get recognition and who want to be validated by this group, that group, they're there to do the bidding of the people, the government, the structure, the ideology that oppress you, but you can't see it. They can't see it because they're benefiting from it, and that's it. They don't care about that. They care about the here and now. I have mines. I'm gonna get mines right now because when they were in there, that's what they were doing. So people get caught up into these political parties. What's the dominant from what's the not? And there's no difference in it because at the end of the day, it's not being controlled by you. You're an unincorporated territory, a colony that the United States have pretty much tell the world that they don't give a damn that they have colonies while they go promoting democracy, which means the majority rule. So if you're participating, quote unquote, on the affairs where the world is gathering and they're going to vote on something, and the majority votes to do what? To eradicate colonialism, then you're not participating in democracy because they just voted to get rid of decolonization back in the 60s and you decided that you didn't care. So majority in democracy didn't apply then, as it's still not applying now. But you have been indoctrinated. You know, there is witchcraft on you to believing otherwise because now here comes the Stockholm syndrome. You figure that you have invested so much sweat, blood, and tears into a system that was never designed to create and created for you to benefit, but you've invested so much of that by history that you think you have a right to keep on perpetuating the ideology. And that's when the devil and the colonizer, the oppressor, is smiling because you're willing to even buck against truth when you hear it. We have all these walks. Can we participating in it? But what's the big picture? The big picture is for you, if you so choose. And everyone have a right. If you want to live your life and to be a slave and to be subservient to people and be satisfied with that because you're getting little sparkling things and trinkets and title and acknowledgement, it is fine for you. There's some of us that don't want that because we don't want to be a slave, no matter what that looks like. And you want not to be a second class citizen, no matter what that looks like, and to be subjugated for the rest of your life, to include the future and your children and the heirs who are coming behind you. You see? And then again, that's where you fit into the whole network of how the intelligence agencies work by these families who are pretty much manipulated governments all over the world, whether you choose to know this or not. It is not whether you think you agree, whether you believe it or not. This is factual. So in the United States, there's 18, actually there's 20 intelligence agencies. There's two of them that they don't mention. And if you don't know the interrelationship of the intelligence community, you would have people coming before you to tell you what the outcome of certain strategic moves are when it comes to controlling the people, the masses, quote unquote, the citizens. Look into what that is, right? Those who have registered to vote, those who are advocating for giving their civil rights. Look at these things for what they are, not what you assumed or presume them to be, so that when things come before you, those who have ears to hear, spirit, do. Don't take the vaccine. This is what it is. Oh, you guys don't know what you're talking. Don't wear a mask. You're wearing masks. Now you take the vaccines. You're wearing the mask. Understand what is going on now. What are you going to say? You explain something. It's not. it's new to you or it's foreign to you to hear something as simple as what registering to vote actually does. How does it affect your civil rights? Presumption of law, assumption of law is going to come from you, who people are going to sit down with you with a title, label, trying to convince you that these things aren't what I would tell you or someone else, those of us who know this, were it to be. And there's no way anybody can have a clean, honest spirit according to the Almighty of righteousness would convince you to participate in these things because you don't know what it means, because you're not exposed to it. You're indoctrinated only to go beyond a certain level when it comes to getting and gathering information. You believe that you're free according to what that means in 2026. I would like for a competent, intelligent person to really sit down and say whether that's a yes or a no. But again, you broken spirits, defeatist mentality, and sometimes people want to believe in people who have these titles and who have this established record of being on pedestal, who have been misleading you for many years, and not because they have a title and it's back and forth that they know what they're talking about, but they will speak that way in authority. I said, I. And when you look at it, they haven't taken you out of the cage. They only position themselves in a local talent show. People, we have work to do, and we know who we are, and it's going to be done because this territory, this colony, this society, this quote unquote civilization have an abundance of intelligent people. No question. We are a bunch of intelligent people. But what we are severely lacking is integrity. We would have enough integrity by now that even though if you're going to suffer a loss, to stand up for the right thing on your job, to speak out against the wrong in your capacity from where you are on the job. By now, given the amount of suffering, the amount of lack that's in the territory, by now someone would have stepped up and stand for it in unity. Can happen, right? And why? So on every radio station, there is always the same complaint of what's happening and what's needed. But there's a group of people and also a study who empowers those people to make you believe that you can't do. So there's a group of people who benefit from this because they love performing, they love doing these things, they love being on stage. And they will convince you to believe in them and not in yourself. And then they become the spokesperson for what you know and what you've experienced. And they now are put on the pedestal because they're repeating everything everybody's given to them because that's what they love to do. But at the end of the day, are they solving the problems? No, they're just branding themselves. Don't have the receipts to prove that you're liberating and keeping yourself free. Honestly, it is politics as usual. People friending up, forming alliances. And at best, if you hear these conversations when they're not in groups, one to another, you want to know where's the integrity? We complain again of the individuals who are filling these government offices, from the commissioners, the senators, the executive branch, the judicial branch. We'll complain about how their conduct is. And all of a sudden, you're in a government, the government, I should say, is supposed to be a body of righteous people. That's what the government is supposed to be. So they're supposed to be faith-based, religious zealots, quoting books back and forth. They're supposed to be moralistic when they get into these government offices. Yes, they should be. They should be that before they go into the government office. That's what they should be like. So now we have to look at the society quote unquote. We have to look at the colony, quote unquote. We have to look at the civilization to see how you're living before you even think about going into any of these offices, because it doesn't matter if you're in government or not in government, because if you're living that life, you're living the life. So, are you going to change the sexual molestation, the pedophilia, the theft, the murdering, the curry favoring, nepotism, the friendisms? Are you going to stop that in the society, in the territory, in the colony? Are you going to stop that so that when you go into these offices, you carry that level of integrity and honesty with you? Because it doesn't start of you having integrity and honesty when you get into the government office. It doesn't start that way. Start from where you are before you get into the office. And don't be surprised if these individuals in these capacities are doing these things, because I can guarantee how many of you who are accusing these individuals in the government of doing these things, and you're doing that right now. Right this minute, you're doing the very same thing that you're criticizing. Well, they come out of a society, they come out of the territory, they come out of the bag of goods that you're from. So what do you expect? So change is not necessarily going to come from voting or registering to vote. Changes have to come with how you're going to address the moral fiber in your society. So that if you close your eyes and you replace all 17 with a brand new, that you wouldn't have the same behavior of various levels. Because then, does it make change? No, it makes limitedly so. When our ancestors who were advocating for civil rights, and callers, if you're calling, I am here now, so I should see the calls when they come in. If not, I'll be notified. It's not by error that when our ancestors were deprived, or they weren't deprived, they were convinced that they were being deprived of having civil rights. That whole mechanism was designed advocating for our ancestors who had pretty much successful and thriving economies apart from the control of the society, or the civil society that was running the government according to the ideology that they were able to benefit from. They were trying to destroy the towns, the cities, the thriving economies that weren't under the control of that ideology of somebody being superior to the next, subjugating. So it was convincing after they aggressively, terroristically destroyed these economies, these towns, these cities that were successful. They deliberately did that, and at the same time tried to convince you that you had to participate because you wasn't given equal rights into a civil system that they had control. So you went to advocate for civil rights in a system that they were controlling. At best, you ran into what? But when the advocacy was for you to forget about that structure that they control and form your own that was successful, you didn't have to worry about entering or using a restroom that was designed for a particular race of color of people back and forth. You didn't have to even look at that or even study that because you were successful on your own apart from that control system, that ideology. So the ideology and the control was, I believe it's a control mechanism beyond what we could see. We could see it now. Those of us who have information want to see. It was by design. So we were supposed to leave our successful, thriving economies in our little towns, banking systems, supermarkets, farms, pharmacies, personal goods and needs, all this stuff was successful, apart from what they control. And here comes the destruction of our civil towns and communities, and to some degree states, and they destroyed it violently, terroristically. They murdered and burned and killed. This is the energy that we're talking about. To convince you to leave and abandon that, to advocate for coming into a civilization that they were controlled, to make yourself a subjugated person, begging to get a right into something, not realizing that you already had the right, but they terroristically destroyed it and wouldn't stop. So much so that when they elected to get the poster child for advocating and going into the civil rights system, Martin Luther King. He also was in ignorance of certain things, but then that's also another interesting uh, study to do, because you have to understand who helped build and create the civil rights movement, who were all the participants in building the energy for the and to advocate for the civil rights movement. But I don't want to segue from that because that's also interesting. But to make a long story short, they were advocating and coming into a civility that a particular ideology was controlling. And when Mr. King realized what he had done, he was in deep regret because he realized that he was been actually bringing people into a burning house they weren't going to ever control. And here we are today advocating and studying civil rights in 2025. It is one thing for our ancestors in ignorance of, you know, trying to rise above uh, uh, an oppressive ideology at the time, and what that confusing state is to advocate for something, but we're not there now. And today, people are still advocating for civil rights. Look what's happening before you. And because, again, the Stockholm syndrome, to include the Willie Lynch, and most locally here, we're going to stay with the Mingo Tamarin. Those of you who figure that you have an opportunity to make a certain salary or to be around a certain particular quote unquote class of people, that you figure you have arrived, and because you've never been exposed to things like this before, and here we go again, you sell your soul already sold. And then here comes the neglect, here comes the murders in the territory, here come the children, our children, our future being attacked, and there's nothing uh, that we as an adult or at least a spiritually awakened beings have enough courage, or I should say enough integrity, to stand against, to prevent that from happening. All is not lost. But we can't come to radio waves just because hosts are allowing you to vent and to stress. You have to realize that we're all complaining about the same things day in, day out, in various radio stations and various platforms, different time zones, even on social media, and not actually using our intelligence and putting integrity to it. Because believe it or not, some of us know fully well what the game is and can't be fooled. I'm preaching to the choir to many people, right? We know who we are. We have work to do. There's work to be done. We are intelligent people, very intelligent people. Can't take that from us. But we're seriously lacking integrity. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling.
Good morning. I was calling for the engineer.
Okay. I think the engineer may have stepped out. You might want to call in a few minutes, about 5 minutes.
No problem. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Yeah. So people, again, the intelligence community here in the U.S., and you'll be surprised, well, some of you will be surprised as to how far the intelligence community has gone, what kind of studies they're involved in, and who is actually controlling the movements and the political movements on this planet. And while some people will probably say, well, they don't care, that's expected. They're living for the here and now. That's also expected. And that's why I give thanks to my ancestors for many of those whose name we don't know, who actually stood up. They lost their life, voluntarily and involuntarily, so that some of us can be sitting in seats. They didn't do it for you to get comfortable, to accept mediocrity, given a title and an opportunity to be important amongst a people. They didn't do that for you to fail at being free. They didn't expect that. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling. Okay, well. Yeah, people. Today we don't have a problem with the interface, which is good, right? Let's try this again. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling. Hello? Well, apparently somebody's having fun. Let me remind people that a song was dedicated to me called Ride Natty Ride. And no matter what they do, no matter what they say, journey there every day. Let's see, we take another call. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Christopher. How are you?
Good morning. I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. Very interesting topic. And just wanted to bring a topic closer to home. Just the concerns we're talking about what's going on with our situation with ICE and, the federal approach towards immigration. And just trying to offer support and advice because I've had people affected by ICE mistaking them for illegal immigrants according to the terminology they're using on people. And I just want to know what is the perspective because we're a multicultural community. People appear to be what they may not be. We have a mixture of identities here, whether it's Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Boricua, whatever you would like to term yourself. And I had a relative of mine affected by that based on her parents. Somebody, basically moved up on her while she was at a jurisdiction receiving some help for her vehicle. And she had her infant in the car. And to have her intimidated by 5 or 6 grown men, not of our culture, and speaking to her very derogative and insisting that she looks like a Dominicana. I just wanted to offer advice to our people to, let them know what their rights are. You have a right to remain silent. You have a right to identify yourself and they have a right to identify themselves. They're also covered with that, but they have to let you know who they are. Their names and batch number is supposed to be apparent on the outside of their uniform. Also, you have a right to give them your information by showing it to them. You don't have to hand them your identity or turn it into them. You can show it to them. And that's what was done, So what another thing to know to watch for the proper identification because people are going by how you appear. And like I said, we are a multicultural society and I expected this to come from our immigration office to advise citizens how they should proceed, so that we can remain safe because that scene could have turned into something else. And to know that an infant was in a car and 5 men who are covered in and claiming that they are so and so, it's scary. It's not a good place as a community, and it could happen to anybody. And I think that the listening public need to voice their concerns because this is something new to us. And, violence can happen. What if you don't have your papers on you? There are things that the law precludes them from doing, and everyone has a smartphone at this point. So Google the laws so that you can know how to defend yourself as a citizen. And also, even if somebody is illegal, they're not deemed a criminal. And I think that we as a society should take the responsibility where it lies. If there are illegal people here, undocumented, and actually working, don't you think our surveillance system should have done something prior to this event having to happen and being enforced on Africa territory? Because, like I said, a lot of citizens can be affected by this, and it's not a laughing matter for anyone. So those of you who feel that it's humorous and it doesn't affect you, and it doesn't affect the color of your skin, maybe because you feel you're protected based on the color of your skin, which may be indifferent from the local population, it is unfair to our people to feel that type of oppression and to see that happening. During that whole entire ICE movement the other day and wrestling people to the ground, they do advise you not to run. So maybe the individuals did not realize that running was actually a bad thing, but it's kind of terrifying to have people come at you the way that they come at you. It's all within your approach. You know, I personally feel that no one should really be considered illegal because how did everyone get here? Who owns these properties really? Who own the land? You know, where did it start? You know, colonization tells you that you own someplace. I don't think so. History would say no. So I just wanted to offer that to the public, if you're listening, that we should be concerned, you know, for all citizens, because like I said, we have a multicultural community. People may appear different based on their DNA, their ethnic background, and I don't feel that anyone should be pursued like that. It needs to be done in a proper way.
Caller, if you would like to hold on, we're at the top of the hour. I'll come right back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stand up for the law. Stand up for decency. Stand up for compassion. Stand up for respect. Stand up for your community. Stand up for your future. Stand up for the Virgin Islands. WSTX, FM 100, the soul of the Caribbean. AM 970, WSTX, Christiansted, Frederickstead, and the Virgin Islands.
Grab your bats and come. James Landscaping. We do tree trimming, debris removal, small and large lot clearance, commercial and residential yard maintenance, all at reasonable rates. Call Jason for Jay's Landscaping. 473-8586. Estimates available. No job too big or too small.
We now pause for this special announcement from Dr. Hubert Watt, a board-certified family practitioner and wound care specialist at Agape Wellness Center and Wound Care. Now that the children are back in school, drivers need to be more careful not to drink and drive or use cell phones while driving. Stop for school buses that are loading and unloading, keep firearms away from children, and pay full attention to all traffic lights. Located across from Central High School and the former Midland Restaurant, call at 340-778-1932 for more information. Keeping our children and community safe is one of the highest obligations at Agape Wellness Center and Wound Care, where we put the care back in healthcare.
More continuous music variety. AM 970 WSTX.
Thank you for holding, caller. You there?
Thank you as well. I'm here.
Okay. You go ahead and make your point, caller. Thank you.
Well, basically, that was the point I wanted to make, that, you know, I expected our government to assure our people, inform our people, let them know what their rights are, and to create some calm in the community. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention, that, you know, we should be concerned because we're a multicultural community. We have people who have migrated here. We have people who are blended people, and they should not be persecuted based on appearance or what we think someone is. So I just wanted to offer that to the listening public to be aware of what their rights are.
Oh, well, thank you for that, caller.
Thank you as well.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thank you. And people, that's one of the things we talk about. Who defines what an illegal immigrant is? And just by that only, based on the studies that they have with people, we have a president who is on one parent a first-generation immigrant, and by the other a second-generation immigrant, who is defining what an illegal immigrant is when his wife, quote unquote, the first lady, is an immigrant herself whose documentation process is in violation of the very thing he is saying. So when you want to, I'm going to come to you. When you want to identify people and you've brought people into the mentality of who and what a people look like when it comes to illegal immigration, you would realize that they're not addressing anyone of an Anglo-Saxon base. Anglo-Saxon labeled white, labeled European, labeled Caucasian. As far as they're concerned, anywhere, even in this colony, as well as in quote unquote the United States. An illegal immigrant to them is anybody what an Anglo-Saxon colored skin. And we've accepted that to the degree where they now are coming in and looking at people. You have to walk with an identification, but if two people are standing up, one is an Anglo-Saxon based genotype, skin color, and one is of a Negroid, they're going to the Negroid, establishing that person as to question whether or not that person is illegal, not unlegal, but illegal, based on what? We've bought into that. And in a territory where we're predominantly anthracitic, ebony in color, copper colored, quote unquote black, descendants of the enslaved, descendants of African, descendants of also original here that were anything but Anglo-Saxon. You, government officials, have bought into it because you can't say it's multi like it is in the United States, because even though it's multi, the government is not structured as such. But again, when the then justice in the early 1900s, it can't come to the coconut right now, recall, defined this colony as an insula, meaning dwellers on an island, and in particularly according to his language, who didn't understand or recognize Anglo-Saxon language nor law. This is what you're proving, because you're allowing, based on what authority or jurisdiction, for ICE to be here in the territory right now. Because we're under the US flag. This is how mental conditioning is in people. And that's the justification. That's the level of intelligence and comprehension you have, according to even you following and being under the flag of the United States of America that has a constitution, and as well as subservient laws that explains that ICE cannot be doing this. And to have enough integrity, but again, comprehension, and a bunch of insular people who are leading us, because there is no pushback, there is no stance on even the Constitution of the United States of America. Here, bringing ICE, and again, to define who is a legal from an, who are a lawful from an unlawful immigrant. Coming from right now, a person who is advocating and agitating to it, representing the head of the flag, who is a second and a first generation immigrant himself. And his wife is currently an immigrant, but you have bought into it. You are defeatist in spirit. You're lost, you're broken to accept somebody defining an illegal straight to your face, because you're not seeing any one of Anglo-Saxon, labeled white, labeled European, labeled Caucasian, who has experienced these ICE quote unquote raids or visits. And that's who we are as a people, because you have people advocating Pan-African this and their civil rights that and all this bunch of foolishness. Because we are a broken people. I should say, not all of us. There's a lot of spirits here who are just born to be slave, and they're going to advocate to keep this going no matter what is explained. Even if ICE comes before them, they're going to go and say ICE have a right to question them while they're standing up next to somebody who's happened to be of Anglo-Saxon descent. They're not stopping and questioning them, but you're going to defend it because, the study's already done that people are going to do that. regardless. And here we are again. When it was said and expressed that they were coming to qualify this population, the only thing that's stopping them from doing that fully is because of the, hold on a second, I think I might be getting a call. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Russ. How are we doing today?
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yes, I'm listening to the conversation we're having, and I see you touched the topic of jurisdiction, but with the conversation, I wanted to also express experience I had. Well, before back in 2018, I was staying in Tennessee, and I realized I'm from the Caribbean, and I realized that the people them in the region I was in, the Native Americans in Tennessee, they look very similar to me. So I thought I was looking into a mirror until I realized, us people of the Native Americans, we all look alike.
Yes.
Right? Here in the Caribbean, I'm Taino, we all look alike. So how can they tell the difference between a person such as myself, who is from here, Tinkoy, born and raised, multiple generations, to another Taino brother, or maybe even a Native American, and tell us that we're not from here, when you can clearly tell when an Asian is from either China. Sometimes we could tell the difference between Japan and Korea with their eyes. You could tell an African American, you could tell a European American from where they came from. How is it that they are determining who to approach here in the VI, especially?
And caller, that's just it. We have a walk to do, and that's primarily when people are advocating for what this administration is doing and not doing. Part of you just mentioned a valid point, is that now when the history is being corrected as to who the Americans are, not what it's represented now, the assimilation of the Anglo-Saxon of the identity of Americans and the falsity of what they look like, the Mongoloids. When that fact is being corrected, and they can't stop this from coming forward, they're trying everything possibly so that the true identity of the Americans, what looks like me and you, can't separate on this planet. They're trying to identify and try to rush this. And so all of these mechanisms, like your experience, is not necessarily unique to you, but it's unique in that who is here and is trying to establish over time. And they did these studies. They know it. Once they keep on pressing this to what level people are being so deprived that they're going to accept what their definition of illegal, first of all, illegal don't mean anything other than having to do with law. It doesn't mean that it's right or it's wrong. Whether something is lawful or unlawful based on what they are defining. And it's also whether or not you have the spirit to discern these things or not. And people are accepting people coming into this territory under the banner of ICE, wearing masks. You're hiding yourself. That's against the law. And under whose okay and authority? In broad daylight. So you have a gang of people wearing a mask, producing themselves as having authority and jurisdiction when they don't have it. But the conditioning in people is that they're going to look for what the banner of the flag says. And the banner of the flag is fighting a particular ideology to keep you what? A subject, and to keep you under subordination. And that's the problem we have here, because we have quote unquote people who are deceiving people because they want to be in ting. They have a sense of entitlement. They have a history of people following who are actually deceiving people in these times, because there is no jurisdiction that ICE have here in this territory. And without having to litigate this here on the air, because this is not the ear, this is not the place to present that when your enemies are listening. They don't have jurisdiction and they don't have authority, because one of the first things that the first caller said, was that identification of self. When they come to you, they have to identify themselves, fully identification, because if not, you roll up on the wrong person, and no badge with no identification letters in it is going to tell you that that person is who they are when they have a mask presentation. Why do you have a mask if you have the authority or jurisdiction? They don't. But again, yeah, Carla, we have work to do.
Agreed, agreed. Also, I have a question. Do you know anything about all these cameras going up around the place? I'm seeing a lot of solar panels on a piece of stick with a camera facing the roadside. So anyone who's traveling on the roads are constantly being surveilled here on this small island. Do you know who's behind all of that? There's like absolutely no privacy on the phones these days. You have all these cameras being put up. There's no one's.
I honestly don't know who is behind it, but we here in this colony, we have people who are in these various seats of authority, quote unquote, who is always follow fashion. So I don't know who's behind putting up the camera. They're going to try and justify the crime. The crime is also encouraged by them. All the crime that's occurring right now. So I don't know the reasons why we are being suppressed even now, because don't forget, some of us still see ourselves rightfully happily being a colony, right? Being under the US. And to just not to segue off of that, that's the reason why they're trying to deny the Constitution that we have right now. For that very same thing that you're referencing, you see? But we haven't gotten there yet because we have a lot of sycophants and people who are broken in spirit and people who are designed and born to be slaves, advocating for a sixth constitutional convention, when at best, the president of the sixth constitutional convention is admitting that he is going to appease the violation of the concerns that was given by the Obama, that's not law, to change it to do what? To change it so that they can do the very thing that they're doing now, to tell us here in the Caribbean who we are and who we can accept and not accept as our brothers and sisters according to what they're trying. So it's a whole mind shift of people trying to deceive people as to what our current constitution is, that brings into the fabric all our brothers and sisters from the Eastern Caribbean islands to participate equally. But they have the language switch now when they're smiling with people, but they're going to do what? Bring in the language to make sure that who they want to quote unquote as a legal immigrant or citizen is going to be done under what? What the United States is controlling them to do, which is to always have a second class based on.
Well, Russ, I'm gonna say this. I'm noticing a huge shift in the diversity of the island right now, and with the investigations that are going into our government officials as our leaders, knowing that a few years from now, the shift of diversity with the history of what our leaders have been doing, they're going to take full control of the government, and we ain't going to have no say. I want to put that out for our locals to pay attention to.
Yes, and Carla, you're right, because that's by design. And again, we have people here who are sycophants. They're happy of filling the colonizer seat, and they don't care. So what's happened before is that the dynamics and the demographic is changing. We have two economies right now, and that demographic is changing right before their eyes. They have a struggle as to whether or not they think we're a state and not a state, whether we're going to become a state back and forth, and all that question whether or not they're questioning, and they don't want to accept the Constitution that we have right now, the final Constitution that was produced by the Fifth Constitutional Convention, because it does not recognize the United States as our sovereign, and it doesn't recognize federal law as our superior law. Only somebody who is a white supremacist believing in that ideology and following it would always advocate for it being differently, you see? So it will be good for you to engage on what that really is, because right now they're in violation of national as well as international law by even trying to convene a sixth constitutional convention. But what they're seeking to do, right, caller, and not to take up much of your time, is that through the Department of Defense, including the Department of Justice and the Department of the Interior, using our land-grant university here to advocate for the change, because they know that they're violating constitutional law as well as international law to do what? To ignore the Fifth Constitutional Convention, the constitution that we have now, the Virgin Islands constitution we have right now. So they have to elect Negroes and Sambos like us to make it believe that they're doing the bidding to change the status of the constitution that we have right now. And comprehension is needed apart from being controlled by the various years of indoctrination as to how a constitution is supposed to be developed and by whom. But again, caller, thank you for your input. Thank you for your insight. And it's good for us to grow. Thank you.
Yeah, one more thing, Russ.
Sure.
We're on a similar topic, but a little off. And also, I want to let the locals know that they have to pay attention to what we are doing when it comes to the properties that are going off the bid. We have a lot of families that when their grandparents, when their parents and everyone pass away and they have a big family, and no one's paying the taxes for the land of the native families to the island. No one's paying the taxes because there's a whole kalalu of who own what. They don't want to split things. These are properties going into bid, and I've seen acres and acres and acres of land being purchased from people who are not from the island. Now, on top of that, the taxes that are not being paid, these are native individuals. Should we be paying taxes? Some of these lands belong to families who've been here since before America purchased the Virgin Islands. So is this something you're familiar with, Russ?
I'm very familiar with that. One of the two things, if we're talking about the families who were prior to the convention between the United States and the Kingdom of Denmark, land ownership was under land patents from the previous colonizer. And there's limited tax to be paid on that, if any. And apart from that, you cannot hold somebody's land, even though the laws was divisively done to strip them of their rights to land ownership based on taxes. But the way they tried to structure the law, it was never done again to keep you in stewardship of the land. It's always to try and retrieve land. So when you have people who have, for instance, their families that can't decide and they're infighting, and they put their properties in probate. That's by design by the government for the very same thing, to be able to strip. It's not for the people. It's not for the families to work these things out because they put them in probate automatically if there isn't a will, or an assignment, or if it's not in trust, entrusted before the death of the original heir. All these things and all the designs for, you haven't paid the taxes. Someone can pay. What taxes are they paying? Especially here in the territory that's protected by an international treaty that they agreed to, by putting people in less of a favorable position, whether or not you have a land patent or not. But they seem to do so. We have individuals in government who have not even taken the time fully to read the treaty between Denmark and the United States, Treaty number 629. They haven't even had the time to even tell you what these articles are, to even respect on some level the agreement between these two violating states, Denmark as well as the United States, two in violation of human rights, both of them, to even consider what agreement they made upon themselves. But yeah, caller, if I don't know if I can get the engineer to hold you so you can give your contact number, or I have them give you mine off air, so I can send you material to even further bring you into this very same thing that you're mentioning. I'm very familiar with that.
Well, Russ, I do know how to get in touch with you.
Okay.
And we could get in contact later on.
Okay.
In that area.
And do so, because I would like to expand on it, and at some particular point dedicate some time on the show to even address these things. But it will have to be when we reason, because I want you to understand when I speak about treaties, what the values of these treaties are and what the values of these treaties aren't, and who it satisfies and who they benefit. But thank you, caller, and do stay in touch.
Will do. Thank you, Russ.
Okay, and thank you for your input. But yeah, people, as the callers previously mentioned, the ice coming in here, what mandates, show us the mandates and who and how, give them the authority to question anybody. And based on how they're questioning, they haven't questioned or stopped anyone that I've seen or ruffle them to the ground who is Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Saxon labeled white, labeled European, labeled Caucasian. I haven't seen them done that. And there's a lot of unlawful of those individuals right now in the territory, even unlawful from South America, even unlawful from Australia, even unlawful from Croatia. They're here in the territory, but you don't see them being questioned. But in the meantime, we have policymakers, lawmakers, we have an executive branch, we have the judicial branch. Nobody's saying anything because they're also complicit by design. They're structured to do so. They feel that they have arrived. There's nothing for them to do because they're not going on. They're not going to move outside of the cage because they've achieved something within the cage. Master leave them their seat and they feel accomplished. The Willie Lynch syndrome is working, and the Stockholm syndrome is there, where they feel comfortable in sitting in the seat of the oppressor without doing anything. And they still don't believe that the government's are lying to them. They don't believe that the judiciary is lying to them. They believe that they're all honest. You know, you have ICE coming in here that automatically determining who is illegal and not illegal. They're going to question. They have a right to stop somebody and ask them. And it's obvious in the Gregorian, only a particular skin color you're doing this to. And that's acceptable. And those of you in government not saying anything because you're indoctrinated and have broken spirit to believe and to follow. The phenomenon of the follow, the Willie Lynch syndrome, cognitive dissonance, the Stockholm syndrome is apart from the fact that you were born.
I've been waiting for something
the things and the positions you have
for a week or a month or
is
a year.
important in this world.
With the blood
Wake
in
up,
the
people. We'll talk to you after this break.
and the sound of the crowd in my ear. You might ask what it takes to remember when you know that you've seen it before, where a government lies to a people and a country is drifting to war. And there's a shadow on the faces of the men who send the guns to the wars that are fought in places where the business interest runs. On the radio, talk shows, on TV, you hear one thing again and again, how the USA stands for freedom and we come to the aid of a friend. But who are the ones that we call our friends? These governments killing their own, or the people who finally can't take anymore, and they pick up a gun or a brick or a stone, and their lives in the balance. There are people under fire. There are children at the cannon. There is blood on the wire. There's a shadow on the faces of the men who fan the flame, of the wars that are fought in places we can't even say the name. They sell us the president the same way they sell us our clothes and our cars. They sell us everything from youth to religion, the same time they sell us our war. I wanna know who the men in the shadows are. I wanna hear somebody asking them why. They can be counted on to tell us who our enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight or to die, and their lives in the balance. There are people under fire. There are children at the cannons. There is blood on the wire. And there are lives in the balance, people under fire. I know who the men in the shadows are. I wanna hear somebody asking them why. It can be counted on to tell us who our enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight or to die. And there are lives in the balance. There are people under fire. There are children at the cannons. There is blood on the wire. And there are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannon. There are
Yeah, people. That's a song written by Jackson Brown. And the more things change, the more they remain the same. For those of you don't know what's happening on Facebook, if you are trying to put posts somehow, it's not coming true. But if it's not one thing, it's the next, right? I am here in the studio, but somehow commentaries are not going to the Facebook. But that is the nature of the beast, right? Don't jump in this water if you can't swim. I can swim. I grew up 3 seconds from the water. Okay, or from the water. People, yeah, we're living in a time when the governments are definitely run by special interest groups who are run by special interest families, believe it or not, and they span the globe. And when you're seeing, take for instance, you're hearing this quote unquote, all of a sudden there's a war. And the war is between Iran and the United States, believe it or not to even worry about Israel. And you have the United States in the continent of North America saying that they have a right to participate in a war on the continent we will refer to as Asia. And they're going to justify and say that they have a right to because is the nation being threatened? No. So what are you trying to justify your actions all the way across those waters on another continent to the extent where you're actually murdering, killing people, trying to deceive people on a lie and have people believe the lie that you're telling that you believe in yourself? You have no right, United States, of doing that, but you do it anyway, right? And all of a sudden, we're at war when the scourge of human trafficking, to include selling of organ parts, this selling of human flesh for consumption, pedophilia, all these things, to see how vast and how large the network of individuals who are participating and who they are is, all of a sudden, again, you go to the playbook where you have war and people are talking about these wars now. So you forget about the Epstein that so happened of all places in the world happened to focus on this little dot here, almost being ground zero for the Epstein case that's talking about the issues and the suffering of, call out company, the suffering of the masses controlled by the Zionist party, who's controlling the APAC, who is actually controlling politics and the politicians in Congress and the Senate right now as we speak, and also the judiciaries in the United States. Who is pulling whose string? Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling.
Good morning, Russ. I heard you talking about the wars that we have going on. I wanted to mention this. It seems that our president, have done some things to upset some countries.
Mhm.
And for some people who believe in our government and everything our government is saying, that's expected of a nation. Every nation, they believe what they are being given from their own. Now, the thing thing that we're not taking into consideration is that these other nations know the truth of what's going on in America and what America is doing to other nations. So as we believe in and believe in the lies that's being told to us by our own, other nations know the truth of what's happening. And while we are staying in this space of deceit, other nations are building up a particular energy towards us. Other people are having a particular perspective on Americans, right? With that said, as we continue flaunting our powers and losing allies, this, we as we go deeper into war, things will get really tight for Americans. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this, Russ, is because here in this territory, we depend a lot on outside sources. On top of that, our oil, our gas that we use to power our power plant, WAPA, this gas is particular. We have to have it special made, right? Russ,
yeah, I'm listening.
So what becomes of our power as locals, who we depend on WAPA, when gas prices continue to go up, or when WAPA cannot provide power due to the lack of resource? What becomes of the local people who do not have solar panels on their homes and do not have alternative source of power? If, and this is a big if, maybe it's a big if, or maybe I'm just looking far ahead. What becomes of us and our struggle when there's no shipment coming in and we cannot put food on our table? And also, what actually I meant to start with the solar panels. We have a couple of solar panels around the island here.
Mm.
Who those solar panels belong to? Acres and acres of solar.
Well, the last time I checked, there was a special interest group. I think the governor's involved. I can't give you the name of them right off the top of my head right now, but it's a special interest group who somehow is creating the infrastructure for the solar panel system that's supposed to be supplementing the main power system from WAPA, but it's the same special interest group who is relying on setting that system up to then probably render WAPA obsolete or minimalize the output so that they could benefit of. So it's corruption upon corruption, but I don't have that information, the receipts right now in front of me. But I'm pretty sure there's someone out there who does, and maybe they'll call and explain that to us, because I am familiar with it, but I can't recall it right now. I don't have the receipts in front of me. But perfect question,
Okay. Russ, do you know of any government any aid for individuals such as myself who can't necessarily afford solar panels or alternative power? Do you know of any aid for individuals such as myself to be able to do so, especially in these times, these questionable times, as we are American territory and America is at war?
I don't know of any particular product, but what I do know is that you tell this to people and they don't want to believe it. I'm pretty sure that there is that mechanism put in place, but when you have, again, people trying to control, or I should say special interest group who are trying to control what the people in the government or of the government supposed to be receiving, they turn it off where they remove your rights and they make it look like it's a privilege. So I'm pretty sure those things are put in place because at the beginning of every year, fiscal year, according to anything and everything under the United States flag, the Congress have already appropriated monies for, and it's paid for. I don't know of any specific where it is itemized, even though, again, I'll tell you, I know somebody out there who has the information, who knows, yes, and they'll tell you what the program is.
Okay, so you're saying that there is a possibility that there are funds allocated for such situations.
Yes, no, there is.
We just don't know if there's an organization who are helping individuals to properly sign up for this program.
The funds are always available, but always, the funds are always available, but just know that there's always this, right, the special interest group that changes what your entitlement is, and they make it and they privatize it where they can benefit from it. So I'm pretty sure the monies allocated are there to do this very same thing. But because it will sit there while they convert what that right is into a privilege, and then we don't know, like you're saying, it's supposed to be automatically, you're supposed to go and request it, and there's no reasons why, especially here in this territory, why they can't fill the lack. Even our local government right here, believe it or not, the United States is indebted to the people of this territory, not for the billions of dollars, but actually trillions of dollars sitting in two accounts. And they don't make it known that that's the monies belonging to the people of this territory, because it is too unbelievable that the US, even if you're considered fiat dollars or not, are indebted to this colony, the people of the colony, to that sum. So how can we advance to use that monies, right, to be able to benefit the people so we don't have this lax system when there is a system called capitalism being put into play and progress? And capitalism cannot exist without the system of slavery. And in order for you to be a slave, they have to remove those things that are your rights and convert them into a privilege that they can either give to you outright or deprive you of, according to what the special interest group is, if that makes any sense, if you're following.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay. But keep in touch, because I'm pretty sure, the coconut can't recall, but there's somebody out there who probably will call and enlighten us, give us that information and these facts.
I will keep listening to see if I can get that information.
Okay.
Or maybe we could find a grant writer who would know their way around.
They're there. They're there.
Yeah.
They're there.
That's excellent. I would love to meet up with someone who can, maybe we can get the community together and try to pull out those funds.
Well, caller, just reach out. That's doable.
Okay, that sounds good.
Just reach out. That's doable.
Okay. All right, Russ. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your input. And you have people, callers, the lines are open. We're taking calls today. I'm here. We're here, and again, in the Gregorian year 2026, where the reality is, in this world, there's no need for a lack of anything. But the lack of something has to do with somebody wanting to put people under an oppressive state. Doesn't matter what race, color, or creed. That's an evil entity when you're trying to put and deprive somebody of something. And part of it is sometimes when people are even not, when they don't even buy into these things, because they will try to tell you that you need things. And if you don't have these things that they're control, they design, they own, then you're not progressing. And they bring you into participating in these things that they own, they control, they design, to have you become now addicted to these things, so to speak, depending on these things, so to speak, to come into the fabric, to become a slave into the system. And therefore you have to keep that capitalism going, because you're bought into these things, saying that these things are necessary, and they're not. But they're necessary because they control, they benefit from it. They take the financial rewards and the control of it when they have the masses depending on things that they design, things that they control. And if they don't design it, they try to control it. And that's where we're at right now in this territory. We're not supposed to be lacking anything. People of this territory are not supposed to be lacking anything. There is no shortage of monies. What there is that people who choose to control, steal, and monitor the monies. We have no shortage of monies. Thinking upon that, whether or not the legislature who had recently agreed to having followed it, to whether or not they were going to raise the minimum wage of employees, whether or not that has even been done or carried through to its fullest, to its fullness. We have people agitating into trying to get into government because we need this change to have better governance so we can have the things. Well, those of you who are agitating to go into government, let's see that when you get there, that you would automatically assign portions, half of your salary, to someone or a family who needs it, but to an organization who can be fact receipt checked, will then distribute that equally so that we don't have the lack. Because the last time I checked in this territory, as recently as yesterday, I saw so many different government vehicles in the territory in one spot, and the work that these different government vehicles and agencies represent wasn't being done. So who's getting paid for not doing anything other than taxing the people for the gas, the general fund, the maintenance of those vehicles, work not being done? You know, you had people actually hanging out in Lyman, wasting gas, not doing the assigned work according to the department that they were representing. They can't tell me I'm making this up. I see it with my own self, myself. And I would like to know, those of you who are concerned that we're going to do, start taking down the license plate numbers of these cars when you see them. Watch what's going to happen. And all of this is by design. We have a whole contingent of people going into there, and they're selfish at best, and they don't have integrity. A lot of them, before they get into the government, they're stealing. You know, they're thieves, they're sexual molesters. You know, they're pedophiles, they're murderers. They do all these things. So when you go into government, don't be surprised that you hear them doing these things, because that's what they were doing before they went in. You know, they're prostitutes at best. And you have a lot of people who are agitating to fill these jobs. They too are prostitutes. Those in the leading position, they're prostitutes. Be it the delegate to the representative house of Congress, be it a senator, be it a governor, lieutenant governor, be it commissioners, a bunch of prostitutes. And let's qualify it. A prostitute being someone who has vacated, abandoned their moral obligations for personal or financial gain. Let's have clarity when we speak. No one is calling them whores or harlots. And the receipts are there that they have abandoned their moral obligations for personal and financial gain. They accept people buying them lunch and buying them dinners and paying for hotel room and stay. And you want to criticize senators for doing the same. You have people who are actually committing insurance fraud, banking fraud, and you want to criticize those officials who are sitting in those seats for doing the same. People, if the society, if the community, if it's a quote unquote civilization, the civil part of it, if you who are filling these things are living and having these behavior and traits, do you expect all of a sudden a hallelujah moralistic change just because you're sitting in the government, even if you're sitting in the highest office as the governor? You can't criticize the governor for doing X, Y, Z and living his life this way if you're doing the same thing. You think just because he's a senator, he's not, a governor, he's not supposed to do these things? That's where we're wrong. We want to hold you to change your behavior, your trait, who you are, just because you're filling a seat that's supposed to be representative of the people. That seat is supposed to be filling the bidding of the people, not the other way around. You're supposed to be operating in the government under the consent of the people, but along the way, we've lost what that is simply because those who are in control were able to put people in government to change the structure of government. So we now believe that instead of the government working, doing the bidding and on behalf of the interest of the people, it's the other way around. And you have been conditioned to wait for Superman and Superwoman and somebody else to come to do it. You've been conditioned. Oh, so glad when somebody show up to do it, right? Not realizing that not because someone becomes a senator because you voted them in or they've been selected to go in, that you don't have an obligation to be in their ear and in their head to make sure that they do your bidding for what you want. But you neglect to engage with them like this and just complain. So when they do what they want to do, you're complaining that they're not doing your bidding, but you expect them to come and do it automatically for you without you doing anything. It doesn't work like that. You always have to be engaged. You always have to be in the ear. How many of you, and it's almost a waste of time to call a senator's office to complain about things that you're seeing and not seeing, or even call the governor's office, you're not even doing that. And there's people who love that. They're waiting for you to come and rescue them and say, oh, you say, oh, they hear you talk. This is what, you're trained to do. And in the process, that's how politics, as usual, as politics does. We're talking about the institution of politics as it pertains to government and governance of a territory. We're not talking about personal little thing in high school and junior school and neighborhood where you like somebody because they don't like what we're not talking about. We're talking about the institution, the institute of politics as it pertains to governance of a people in government and in private sector that affects how you live. We're talking about that. So let's start now. And don't get upset if you're a pedophile. Don't get upset if you're a sexual molester. Don't get upset if you're a thief. Don't get upset if you're a murderer. Don't get upset if you buy into the friend up and the friend down, the buy in, the buy out, the nepotism and the friendism. Don't get upset at that. Just change it if you can. And if you can't change it, then here we are. Politics as usual, right? What are you politicking for to change? The change is going to be to take those who are out so that you could come in to do it on various levels, or to just change where people benefit. Where the institute of voting and the registration, where we understand why it was designed. It is a fleeting illusion that you're changing things when you're not. And why information based on how you're supposed to know how your civics work, how your government is actually structured, what is the purpose of the government, so that our children would know these things by the time they come to our age, that they know fully well how a governance of a territory or a state works. Apart from philosophical and ideological maneuvering into doctrines, into having people presume and assume what the laws are from what they aren't. Where at least reading and comprehension can be had. Because believe it or not, you have a lot of people with degrees here and the titles here back and forth, and the comprehension is very limited when it comes to these documents, the very important documents that control your life, whether you accept them or not. And people in participating in that wants to not accept or encourage you to use your intelligence because you want to feel comfortable because somebody is here to do the bidding for you. It doesn't work like that. And they know that, so they would go ahead and encourage everything to make sure that all you're going to do is complain and talk about the same thing, not realizing that you're just as intelligent as the next person and you could do. When they want you to participate in the structure of things that they can control, and every time you have quote unquote these organizations where you're going to have a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a sergeant of arms, that is purpose for what? For failure. But you want to believe in structuring these things. So when you structure things, you feel important, but that's control. The only successful revolution is one that doesn't have a leader, believe it or not, because leaders are automatically, it's going to be organic in structure. It occurs organically. But those who have ears and spirit to hear and to feel and to do, let us do, because it's very difficult to walk a people through who have been otherwise subjugated over years of indoctrination, and they're subscribing to what they see on these media, what they hear on these media, what they've been reading, what they've been exposed to all the years. It's very hard to remove that out of people's psyche. And when you have people sitting down of a particular skin color, automatically, no matter what, they can't even tell. Someone of a Anglo-Saxon presence, they automatically bow down. What's the purpose of it? Why? You don't even recognize that you're doing so. And those who benefit from it, they're smiling and they're probably saying, no, listen to yeah, and listen, it's okay. Truth is a constant. We can't change that. It is not a temporary. Hypocrisy a lot of time is a greatest study, and some of us are not sophisticated enough to participate in that level of hypocrisy, you know? All you know is that you were given rights by the Almighty of righteousness, and you try to do and abide by it according to what we can, right? This place is abundance of intelligent people. We are intelligent people. Defend our children. We have a bunch of geniuses that are being marginalized systematically so. They're not being fed, even when they come into Institute of Learning, that sanctuary where if they don't have a good home structure, remember, Mr. Koopman always reminds us that the ruin of a nation begins in the home of its people. So if you're destroying the home of the people, where our little intelligent geniuses are coming out from, and they come into our system of learning that should be the sanctuary, we don't have the sanctuary prepared for them to save them. And who are the children? That's our future, believe it or not. So who's going to advocate on their behalf fully? It's an ongoing thing. It's not dismantling the schools, where you're moving the schools out of the neighborhoods to centralize them in one place, to have them commuting unnecessarily. What for? In this territory, small and tiny place like this. But people are going to always remind you, never give up, sell, nor abandon your right. To give in or to purchase.
I've been waiting for something to happen.
And our ancestors
For a week or a month or a year.
walk good
With the blood in the ink of the headlines and the sound of the crowd in my ear. You might ask what it takes to remember when you know that you've seen it before, where a government lies to a people and a country is drifting to war. And there's a shadow on the faces of the men who send the guns to the wars that are fought in places where the business interest runs. On the radio, talk shows, on TV, you hear one thing again and again, how the USA stands for freedom, and we come to the aid of a friend. But who are the ones that we call our friends? These governments killing their own, or the people who finally can't take anymore, and they pick up a gun or a brick or a stone, and their lives in the balance. There are people under fire, there are children at the cannons, and there is blood on the wire. There's a shadow on the faces of the men who fan the flames of the wars that are fought in places we can't even say the names. They sell us the president the same way they sell us our clothes and our cars. They sell us everything from youth to religion, the same time they sell us our wars. I wanna know who the men in the shadows are. I wanna hear somebody asking them why. It can be counted on to tell us who our enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight or to die, and there are lives in the balance.
Third
There
row for the
are people under fire.
oh, third row.
There are
Oh,
children
that's
at the
round.
cannons. There is blood on the wire. And there are lives in the balance.
Yeah, Jim Croce got a lot of songs.
People under fire.
Even
Children at the cannon. There are